Hi, my name is Professor Yael Fisher. I'm from Israel. I teach in a college in the southern part of Israel, and I teach graduate students of educational administration. For the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about parental involvement, and especially about the perception of undergraduate and graduate students about the term of parental involvement. And the question that actually we're going to ask is, what do teacher education college students know about parental involvement? And the study I'm going to present is a comparative study which was done between the United States and Israel. We're going to compare both perceptions of students in Israel and in the United States. So we'll start first of all talking about what actually parental involvement is, and we can today determine parental involvement in school that it actually reflects a very broad spectrum of 44 activities characterized by the focus of the parent activity within school or out school grounds, the organizational level, which means student level or organizational level, and focus of activity, which could either be improvement of resources, control, pedagogy, or well-being and welfare. Actually, this term was determined by myself about 10 years ago. So if we know already what we mean when we say parental involvement, what are the benefits of parental involvement at the child level? We know that when parents are more involved in the child's school, there's a raising of the level of the academic achievements. We don't know exactly what brings to what. If the parent is more involved, do actually the achievements rise? Or because he has children that have high achievements, he actually brings them to even be higher. But still we know there's for sure some kind of effect. The other thing is that we know that actually being involved in children's life in school actually raises the child's self-esteem, and for sure we know that it helps us develop the excellence of the child, because actually parents are those who know their children the best way, and being involved could actually help with developing their own excellence. That is on the child's level. But if we see the organization level, so there's also benefits, because in one of our research, we found that actually schools that the parents are more involved are better schools. So if we know that both we have the child's level and we have the parents' level, so for sure we know that we have to help parents to be more involved in what's happening in the school. So the aim of this actually quantitative study was to understand and compare the perception of pre-service teachers that are just learning to be teachers and are going through their undergraduate studies, which is either BA degree or BEd degree. And but we did also ask MA students that they're in-service teachers, MA or MEd again, and we wanted to see if there's any difference between Israel and the United States with actually percepting this term of parental involvement. The sample included 469 education college students, and out of them 269 were American students and 200 were Israeli students. We used a questionnaire which was called Perception of Parental Involvement. It had 44 items, the same items I talked before when we saw this graph. And we had 12 background variables, and altogether the questionnaire actually contained 56 items. It was a 5-point Likert scale, as we all know what that means, ranging from I completely disagree, the number 1, to I completely agree to the number 5. Education college students were asked to state the extent to which each of these items actually are coincided with their views and opinions about parental involvement, indicating whether they consider their activities described in the item to be acceptable expressions of parental involvement. So that means that we actually ask them, if we say a parent takes part in PTA, does that mean it's parental involvement, or that does not mean parental involvement? The scale included 4 actually subscales, which the first one was enhancement of schools' resources. We had it marked as PIE-SR, pedagogy, PIP, control, PICT, and school welfare, PISW. In an earlier study, when we determined the term of parental involvement, in which the scale was used to gain the understanding of parental involvement, as I said 10 years ago, reliability of the entire scale was 0.89 Kornbach alphas, and the reliability of the subscales was 0.80, 0.85, and 0.92 and 0.70. So actually we see a nice scale, and all of the items in the questionnaire started with, I think that parental involvement should include. The study was conducted in Israel in 3 colleges and the United States in 1 university during the 2017 academic year. That was actually 4 years ago. And in order to be sure that we're going to have a high rate return, the questionnaire was handed by the research assistants that each of us had. We had it in Israel, and the United States had it in the United States during classes. Either it was freshmen, sophomores, seniors, etc. And the aim was actually to try and see that, first of all, we're keeping confidentially. Of course, we explained that they do not have to answer the questionnaire. Things we all know and we all do in researchers like this. If I'm coming now to the results, so principal component analysis of the 4 original constructs of the TPPIS, which is the basic questionnaire of parental involvement, were found in the Israeli sample, which makes sense because we started the whole scale. We built the scale in Israel. So if we find it again in Israel, it makes sense, and it shows that it has like a long-term consistent of the samples. And we saw that actually we have 4 constructs. We have resource and enhancement, we have pedagogy, we have control, and we have school welfare. That's exactly what I showed you in my first PowerPoint slide. What we see now is that we used a SEM structural equation model in order to see what will actually predict the perception of parental involvement, both in Israel and the United States. In Israel, we found that gender, age, the level of studies, meaning if it's a BA, BED, or MA, MED study, and the year of the study, first year, second year. In Israel, our School of Education is 4 years, and our School of Graduate Studies is 2 years, so we wanted to see if there's any difference. When we do structural equation models, we try and find a model which has good fit, and as is showed as a reasonable fit of what we try to show. And we saw in this case, in the Israeli sample, that we had a very good structure of it. And especially if we'll look over here, I'm moving now the mouse around this part, which shows 34, the regression is 0.34 considered age, studies, the year of the study, and the factor of resource enhancement, meaning that MA and MED students think that resource enhancement is a very strong it's something that will predict their perception of parental involvement. That's very, you can see it by just looking at this, at the results we got here. And we also saw that the studies will predict the factor of control. I just want to make one small remark, that when we say control in parental involvement, we mean it's exactly what happens when a parent takes his fingers, put it on his paws, and say, okay, guys, something is wrong in school, and I want to control it. I want to see what's wrong, what's going in schools. For example, a child comes home and his mother, father, or whoever is in charge of him takes his notebook and sees that the child wrote night, N-I-T-E, instead of N-I-G-H-T. And he says, why? And the child says, what do you mean? That's what the teacher wrote on the board. And then he says, okay, I think that something's wrong in the school. I want to check it. Why would a teacher write night, N-I-T-E, and not N-I-G-H-T? That's part of what control is. And of course, there are different things as well. So we see that actually the best predictor would be the year of the student, either it's undergraduate or graduate, but especially graduate students. And that makes sense. I'll talk about it in a few minutes when I'll talk about the conclusion. But that makes sense because if we usually, especially in Israel, MAA or MED students are in-service teachers. In Israel, we start teaching in schools with a bachelor degree. We do not need a master's degree. So as more you teach in schools, you have a better perception of what actually parental involvement is. You have already the experience with parents. You know already what parents would say or actually would not say. And that is a strong predictor, both also on resource enhancement and also on control. We'll see in a second that in the United States things are a little different, and we'll think about it why. So that is the Israeli picture. This is what we see in Israel. A good model fit with 4 components that are, we found them before, we see them all the time in Israel, the same 4 components of parental involvement, with the studies, the year of the studies, as a predictor of the perception of parental involvement. We see also that we have an effect of gender when we see like the minus before the number, as in any regression that we check. That means that women will feel about resource enhancement a stronger opinion than men. The same thing as age, as we see here, meaning that the older the student is, the stronger his opinion will be about, here actually it's about control and also about resource enhancement. We see the minus both in both areas. And as I said before, the year of the studies. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not the year of the studies. It's either if it's MA or BA. The year, if it's the first year, the second year, the third year, etc., has no prediction effect whatever. Let's see now what happens in the United States. So in the American sample, we didn't find 4 factors. When I say factors, of course, we did factor analysis. We found actually 3 factors. So we did find the resource enhancement. But we saw that pedagogy and control are actually seen in the United States as 1 factor, not as 2 factors as we saw in Israel. And we also saw that they see school welfare as part of parental involvement. Now let's look at the model here in the United States. What we see here is we see that also gender predicts pedagogy and control, age predicts pedagogy and control, age also predicts resource enhancement, and here we have an interesting finding that we did not see in Israel, that the year of the study, when actually they go to school, if it's the first, second, third, fourth, etc., will predict the perception of school welfare. And as higher the time they're in school, if it's will be the higher years, like the third, fourth, the stronger will be the perception of the term parental involvement included the school welfare. So this is very interesting. This is a good model too. When we tried to actually engage the 2 models, we weren't able to do them. We didn't get a good fit. So what actually can we see? We see we have a model, and we can really say that the perception of parental involvement will be predicted by gender, by age, by studies, that means which degree is actually pursued, and the year of the studies. So actually, what are our conclusions? The first thing is that it indicates that the model was a better fit for the Israeli students, which makes sense because it was actually first determined in Israel. And it's acceptable fit for the United States students as well. However, in general, Israeli and United States students in teaching colleges agreed on many of the components of parental involvement. This is a very important say. The second thing is that pre-service teachers' background variables predict the perception of parental involvement. As I said, the age, the gender, the year of the study, and of course the degree that they're actually pursuing. So what is the contribution of such a study? First of all, the study may contribute to the teacher's pre-service studies, and these results may suggest that the fundamental concepts that constitute the family engagements are not actually culturally bound, but rather common among different cultures and nations. But this still needs us to have further research and to try to confirm it. This was a first research done comparing the 2 perceptions. So we actually have to go into further research and try to see if we see it in other countries as well, not only in Israel and the United States. So thank you very much for being with me, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.